The history of human punishment is a long and dark one. But few forms of torture are as horrifying, as deliberately cruel, or as psychologically scarring as flaying, the act of skinning a person alive. Across continents and centuries, rulers, empires, and conquerors turned this brutal practice into both punishment and spectacle. To flay someone alive is to strip away not only flesh but dignity, leaving the victim in the most vulnerable and agonizing state imaginable. It is a punishment designed to extend suffering, inspire terror, and establish the absolute authority of the one in power. Its cruelty is unparalleled, its legacy etched into the collective memory of the societies that witnessed it. Flaying is one of the oldest forms of capital punishment recorded in history. Its earliest accounts emerge from the empires of Mesopotamia, where Assyrian kings reportedly flayed rebels and enemies, leaving their skin to be displayed as a warning to others. Archaeological evidence and ancient texts describe how conquered peoples were executed in this manner, their bodies exposed to the elements, their skin used as a warning for miles. In these societies, flaying was more than a method of execution. It was a deliberate tool of psychological warfare. The sight of a flayed body struck terror into the hearts of entire populations, making rebellion not only dangerous but unthinkable. The Assyrians perfected the method as a political instrument. They understood the effect that public terror could have on obedience and control. Captives were often flayed after battle, sometimes after other forms of torture, their skins removed meticulously while still alive to prolong suffering. Once removed, the skins were displayed in public squares or hung from city gates, turning each punishment into a macabre trophy of conquest. This spectacle sent a clear message: the empire tolerated no dissent, and the consequences of resistance were unimaginably severe. The psychological impact of seeing a fellow human, i.e. skin, stripped away alive is almost impossible to comprehend today, but to the people of that era, it was a potent demonstration of absolute power. The practice of flaying spread across other regions and centuries, often adapted to local cultures and legal systems. In India, texts and chronicles record instances of rulers flaying rebels and criminals as a warning to their subjects. The Mughal Empire, for example, sometimes used the threat of flaying to maintain order in rebellious provinces. In Europe, particularly during the Middle Ages, flaying occasionally served as a punishment for treason or extreme criminality, though it was rarer than other brutal methods like hanging, drawing, and quartering. The essential logic remained the same. Flaying was designed to maximize pain, humiliation, and fear, ensuring that its victims, and those who witnessed it, understood the consequences of defiance. Flaying alive is not merely a physical punishment, it is an extraordinary exercise in psychological terror. The victim is fully conscious throughout the ordeal, experiencing the excruciating tearing of flesh, the shock of nerve endings, and the terror of impending death. Pain in flaying is both immediate and prolonged. Every layer of skin removed is a new wave of agony, a cruel crescendo that emphasizes the helplessness of the victim. Unlike execution by sword or poison, which can be swift, flaying is designed to prolong suffering, extending it over hours, sometimes even days, until death finally arrives. Witnesses, soldiers, crowds, and even family members often observed these executions, creating a spectacle that embedded fear into the collective consciousness. The methods and tools of flaying varied depending on the culture and era, but the general process remained terrifyingly consistent. Victims were often tied or restrained in a way that minimized movement, making it impossible to resist or protect themselves. Sharp knives or specialized flaying tools were then used to peel the skin from the body in strips. In some instances, flaying began with the extremities, hands, feet, or scalp, before moving to larger areas of the torso and limbs. In others, executioners started at the back or chest, carefully working their way through the body. The precision was deliberate, as the aim was to prolong suffering without killing the victim prematurely. Throughout the process, victims were usually conscious, aware of every incision, every tug of torn flesh. Flaying was not only a method of execution, but a public demonstration of dominance. Ancient societies understood that the fear of death alone was insufficient to control populations. They needed a visual, visceral example of what awaited those who defied authority. When the bodies of flayed victims were displayed in public, the effect was profound. Children, soldiers, and civilians alike were confronted with the most extreme consequences of rebellion. Entire cities and regions could be subdued simply by the memory of a single flaying. In this way, flaying functioned as both punishment and deterrent, a chilling reminder that power could be enforced through unimaginable cruelty. Historical accounts of flaying also suggest its use in ritualized or symbolic contexts. In some empires, flaying was reserved for the most reviled enemies, traitors, rival rulers, or individuals who had committed particularly egregious crimes. By making the punishment unique and horrifying, rulers reinforced social hierarchies and moral codes. The act itself became a form of communication. It told the populace who was untouchable, who was expendable, and what the consequences of transgression were. The victim's body was transformed into a living symbol of state authority and divine justice, merging politics, religion, and terror into a single act of violence. While the physical aspects of flaying are terrifying enough, the mental trauma inflicted on victims and witnesses alike cannot be overstated. The anticipation of pain, the helplessness of being restrained, the helpless observation of one heir's own body being torn apart, all contribute to a psychological horror that rivals the physical agony. Studies of extreme torture suggest that prolonged suffering of this type can induce states of shock, disorientation, and intense fear, sometimes causing victims to lose consciousness before death. In historical accounts, however, executioners often ensured that victims remained conscious as long as possible, extending the terror for maximum effect. The flaying of rebels, enemies, or criminals also served as a statement about the absolute authority of the state. Empires and rulers relied on fear to maintain order, and flaying was a tool of both punishment and propaganda. Its cruelty was a form of social control, a way to ensure obedience not merely through threat, but through vivid, unforgettable examples. Witnesses were left with indelible images of agony and death, and the memory of these punishments could persist for generations, reinforcing obedience long after the act itself. Despite its extreme brutality, flaying persisted for centuries because of its effectiveness. It was terrifying enough to deter rebellion, dramatic enough to cement authority, and ritualized enough to serve as a demonstration of power. Even as societies developed other forms of capital punishment, the memory of flaying remained a powerful deterrent. Medieval Europe, for example, had public executions that combined hanging, drawing, and quartering, often incorporating flaying of some kind as part of the spectacle. In Asia, the threat of flaying continued to serve as a warning to potential rebels, maintaining order through fear rather than justice. Flaying also had a symbolic dimension that extended beyond punishment. In some cases, rulers and executioners treated the victim's skin as a commodity of terror, displaying it, preserving it, or using it in ritualized ways to convey messages. In Mesopotamia, flayed skins were sometimes nailed to city gates or palace walls as a warning to outsiders. In medieval Europe, descriptions of flaying were often used in chronicles and literature to illustrate the consequences of sin or rebellion, embedding the horror into cultural memory. In this way, flaying transcended mere physical punishment, becoming a symbolic language of terror and control. The enduring legacy of flaying lies not only in its historical occurrence, but in its psychological resonance. The idea of being skinned alive remains one of the most universally terrifying concepts imaginable. Across cultures, it evokes horror, revulsion, and fear. Even today, when we consider the act of flaying, we confront the extremes of human cruelty and the lengths to which authority has gone to enforce obedience. The punishment represents not just the infliction of physical pain, but the use of fear as a tool of social and political control. In exploring flaying, we are also forced to confront the paradox of human cruelty and resilience. While empires used this method to terrify and dominate, societies have endured, and knowledge of these acts has been passed down as cautionary tales. The horror of flaying challenges us to reflect on the capacity for both brutality and empathy within human history. By understanding the full extent of such punishments, we gain insight into the mechanisms of power, the psychology of fear, and the profound value of human dignity. Flaying alive is not just a relic of the past. It serves as a reminder of what happens when authority becomes absolute and unchecked. It teaches the importance of laws, rights, and ethical restraint in the use of power. While no society today practices flaying as punishment, its historical presence continues to influence our understanding of cruelty and justice. Documentaries and historical analyses preserve these lessons, ensuring that the memory of such extreme suffering informs our modern sense of morality and humanity. In conclusion, flaying alive stands as one of the most brutal, horrifying, and psychologically devastating punishments in human history. Its impact extended far beyond the victim, reaching into the hearts and minds of entire populations, ensuring compliance through terror. From the Assyrian empires to medieval Europe and Asia, rulers have used flaying as a tool of control, punishment, and symbolic demonstration of power. The practice challenges us to consider the depths of human cruelty and the ethical imperatives that arise in response. It reminds us that suffering has been a weapon, a spectacle, and a warning, but also that through reflection and understanding, humanity can learn, remember, and choose a different path.